So, one of my mom's favorite stories to tell from when I was an infant was that when I started crying uncontrollably, whether it was for need of food or sleep or whatever, the best thing she could do was take me outside under a big tree we had in our backyard and just stand out there with me for a couple minutes. And that had a higher success rate of calming me down and cheering me up than just about anything else she could ever do. So, I guess from before I was even aware of it, I was in love with the outdoors and nature and green trees, etc., etc. Um, when I was 12 or 13, my friend and his dad took me on a mountain biking trip to Mammoth Mountain in California. Before that, obviously, like most little boys, I had ridden my bike around town and on various random little local trails or whatever, but I hadn't even come close to experiencing a real bike park before. And even on that first trip, I knew that this was something that was going to be a big part of my life, was mountain biking. I got really into it, and within 1 year, I was trying to hit the double black diamond trails at Mammoth. I think it was the next summer we went up again on my old cross-country bike, a Specialized stump jumper. And of course I took it down velocity, double black, and it was way too much for a crappy little cross-country bike to handle, and I exploded my rear shock and oil leaked out everywhere, and I had to walk my bike the rest of the way down. And at that point I saved up and upgraded to a downhill bike, which was a Specialized Big Hit DH. The really old one, the first year that Specialized made downhill bikes at all. They only had one, the Big Hit DH, in 2002, and that's what I got. I guess it was around 2004 or 5 when I got it. I got an old used one because it was cheaper that way. So then I went through the rest of my childhood, like most kids, going to school, whatever, really just looking forward to whatever mountain bike trips I could take during the summer to go up to Mammoth or North Star or Whistler, and during the winter going to a bike park out in Boulder City, Nevada called Bootleg Canyon, which, it gets to be 110, 120 degrees out there in the summer, so that's a good place to go during winter break for mountain biking. I did try snowboarding once when I was about 15 or 16. I really liked it, but I did also realize that, saving up money for bike parts, upgrades, lift tickets, hotel costs, whatever, to take trips was already very expensive, and I couldn't really afford to get into another expensive hobby like snowboarding. I mean, the gear is cheaper, snowboard is probably like a fifth the cost of a downhill bike, if that, and not much can break on it unless you break the whole board or little thing on a binding. Repairing a bike, if the wrong thing breaks, if a shock explodes or whatever, that can potentially cost up to $1,000 to fix. So that was more expensive, but lift tickets, hotel costs, whatever, in ski resort towns, they're a hell of a lot more expensive in the winter than they are in the summer. So in any case, I decided I like snowboarding too, but I like biking more, and I can't really afford to do both. So I'll just stick with biking and save up money and vacation time and whatever I need to do that. Well, I guess I was still back when I was going to school, so no vacation time. But then once I finished high school, I thought about it, and I decided, a lot of people say that the key to happiness in life or whatever is doing something you love for a living. And I really thought about that, but I realized that people who do something they love for a living live for their job, naturally. And the things I was passionate about were spending as much time outdoors as I could and mountain biking, and I still wanted to get back into snowboarding at some point, and playing disc golf and going hiking, and just kind of loving my life through my hobbies, I guess. So I made the conscious decision when I finished high school, I'm not going to go the route of trying to get a job that I love, because then that job will become my life, and I want to feel like I'm living for things other than my job. So I set out to try to find a career path that would allow me uh, to continue to do the hobbies I loved, possibly tack on more hobbies if I made enough money to support picking up snowboarding or whatever else. I mean, plenty of other things I could be interested in if I had the money. Um, so I got a job as a video editor, thinking that this is the type of work that, with the internet and with uh, increasing network connection speeds and whatever, that within several years, this is something I could easily be doing from home. I don't interact with customers. I have to meet deadlines to release products or to finish editing whatever I'm editing, but it's not essential that I have to do it from 9 to 5, Monday through Friday. As long as I meet my deadlines, I could work from 3 in the afternoon until midnight, or 6 in the evening until 2 or 3 in the morning if I needed to. Or I could work 12, 14 hours a day for 3 days in a row and take 4 days off. That they're logically, the work didn't require a Monday through Friday 9 to 5 schedule, although that's how I started out. So I got a job at a software training company editing software training videos. It was pretty boring, but it came naturally to me, and it was a nice place to work. And then I spent the next several years just kind of building up my reputation at the company and trying to eventually work towards talking to them about letting me work from home, doing the same work, letting me make my own hours, whatever, as long as I made my deadlines. And I guess 4 or 5 years later, let's see, when was it? Yeah, I think it was about 2008 or 2009. That finally happened. I convinced them that I had the self-discipline and whatever to continue doing the same work from home and making my own hours and turning in my projects before their deadlines or whatever, and being paid per project instead of being hourly. So technically I'm not an employee of this company anymore. I'm a contractor, but most of my work comes through them anyway. Yeah, so in 2009 I started contracting for them instead of being an in-house employee and working from home, and I was still very near the offices in Southern California where I grew up. Did that for about a year and a half, and at that point I didn't consider moving away to somewhere where I could do more of the hobbies I loved, because my girlfriend still had a job actually at the same company, and I didn't want to just up and leave and abandon her because I had arranged everything the way I needed for it to be myself. But then in the summer of 2010, she actually got laid off. And it was a pretty spontaneous decision because, she either had to start looking for new work down there, or I had to take this opportunity to try to make this dream of mine happen. Now, it was always my number one dream to move up to Whistler in Canada. But logistically, that was a lot harder to do. I didn't think I could continue doing the same work, or actually I knew I couldn't. I talked to them about it. What if I lived out of the country? And they said it would cause tax complications and whatever for them if they had a contractor out of the country doing the same work that contractors and employees in the country were doing. So then this whole arrangement I had would have been completely pointless that I worked towards if I had moved to Whistler. So that was out. And also I wanted to stay at least somewhat more near to the rest of my family in Southern California. So then the two choices became Mammoth or somewhere around Lake Tahoe, because the other bike park in California is here at North Star, at the north shore of Lake Tahoe, basically. And after some consideration, we decided to go with living here in Truckee, which is very close to North Star, because Mammoth has a great bike park. It would also be a great place for me to take up snowboarding, but it had several downfalls from just being out in the middle of nowhere. Here in Truckee, it's a small little town, which is what I like. I grew up in a small town, a little town called Ojai in Southern California again. So they're both small towns, pleasant, whatever, but close to Truckee, about 40 minutes away down the hill across the border to Nevada, is Reno. which is just convenient, for department store shopping or stocking up on groceries that are much cheaper down there than they are up here. An airport if anybody wanted to visit us. The list goes on and on. And Mammoth is just kind of isolated out in the middle of nowhere. If you need an airport or a Walmart or whatever, you're driving 3 hours to get to one. But up here, it had the small town feel. It was around the things I wanted to do, but it was close to a big city, which is it's just convenient. And the other factor was we had 2 dogs, and Mammoth is at such a high elevation. I think the town is above 8,000 feet. The top of the mountain is just over 11,000. That there are no fences. Nobody builds fences because the snow in the winters just destroy them up there. And we didn't want to have to keep our dogs cooped up in the house all the time, or put them on dog runs or whatever. We kind of liked the idea of being able to, at least in the spring, summer, fall time, just leave them in the yard if we wanted to go do something all day instead of having them cooped up or tied up. And at least some houses here in Truckee have fences. It's still hard to find a house with a fence here because they've got to be built pretty strong to withstand the winters here. But there were some. So those were the 2 factors. So then in the summer of 2010, I kind of made my dream happen, so to speak. I didn't make it all the way to Whistler, but I made it to an area that was pretty damn close, that had the things I wanted to do. And so my girlfriend and I moved here in September of 2010. And of course, living in an area like this, that eliminated the expenses that I had previously of having to save up vacation time and pay for a hotel and whatever when I took trips for mountain biking. Now I could mountain bike or take up snowboarding or whatever I wanted and still get my work done in the evenings. I wouldn't have to take time off work, wouldn't have hotel costs and whatever. So I decided as soon as we moved here, okay, I'm going to mountain bike in the summers and I'm going to finally take up snowboarding. So that when we moved here, I still had only snowboarded one time in my life, I think for about a week when I was a teenager. So we moved here and it went great at first. I got a North Star pass even though we moved late in the season in September, and was biking a lot there and through some locals, discovered some other great trails hidden in the woods. Any ski resort town that also has mountain biking tends to have some illegal hidden trails that you have to know the right people to find them, and in a lot of ways they can be a hell of a lot more fun than whatever the bike park has to offer, because there's no regulations and safety concerns and whatever. People just go out in the woods and build whatever they want. So I had a great time, biking from September through I think about mid-November, when the snow started piling up too much to enjoy biking anymore. And then I got a winter pass at North Star and went out and bought a snowboard and boots and bindings and whatever, being pretty brand new to it. I didn't remember much from my one trip when I was a teenager. It came back to me pretty quickly. I didn't have to go through the painful process of learning to link turns and falling on my ass for a day or two. That lasted maybe a run or two, and then kind of the muscle memory, I guess, came back from my one trip when I was younger. But even back then, I never got beyond being able to just link turns and go down intermediate runs. And, I remember the most thrilling part of that trip was when I learned to go straight for a couple hundred feet, which for a beginner is kind of challenging on a snowboard. So then Truckee got the harshest winter it has had since the 1950s, the winter of 2010-2011. I should have looked up the statistics, but the snowfall was over twice the average amount for a Truckee winter, and it was just crazy. It didn't really pick up till February, so February and March it was just like snowing nonstop for 2 months, and we had some crazy storms that dropped like 6 to 8 feet in a few days. Just nonstop. So it was a crazy winter, and it was a lot of fun trying to learn to snowboard basically during that winter. I started doing smaller jumps, and I didn't get to rails or anything, but doing a few boxes or whatever, and it was a fun process. I kind of regret that we didn't move up the winter before. You know, I wish that I was better at snowboarding so I could have appreciated such an awesome winter a little more than being a complete beginner. But nonetheless, it was a lot of fun. So the first couple months in the fall, fun biking. All of the first winter, fun snowboarding. It was a really long winter. It dragged out into the summer a while. I remember a lot of locals saying that on the 4th of July, they could never remember seeing snow still on North Star or whatever. I mean, it stopped snowing by early June, mid-June, but there was so much snow piled up that it didn't finish melting until like late July, at least up on the resorts. Maybe downtown it did. So therefore, you know, North Star's bike park opened really late that summer. Um, I think it didn't fully open until very late July or early August. You know, they opened some of the lower trails, and the same goes for the local trails that were hidden in the woods around there because they're around the same elevation in heavily wooded areas or whatever. So the mountain bike season that summer started really late. Um, but once it started, you know, I started having a lot of fun. Um, But that summer is where things kind of started to go downhill. So I had been living in Truckee for less than a year, kind of being excited and proud of myself and whatever that I was able to pursue this dream I had since being a kid of moving up into the mountains and mountain biking and snowboarding and having a job that allowed me to do those things that, you know, where I could afford bike fixes and upgrades and lift passes and make my own hours, so I never missed a good powder day in the winter. You know, if I woke up and it looked like good powder, well, I'll do my work in the evening. You know, it was perfect. It was exactly what I wanted. You know, work was still boring, but I knew that from the get-go. You know, I made that sacrifice to let all this other stuff happen. But so in the summer of 2011 then, uh, when we moved up here the year before, I should have specified when I said Truckee only had a few houses with fences. Um, we did manage to rent a house with a fence for our dogs. So then, in the summer of 2011, we had some friends up visiting, and I think we'd gone biking for the day or whatever, and we were going to go out to dinner. So we left our two dogs in the backyard with a fence, and went out to dinner and came back. And a few hours after that, our smaller dog started throwing up a lot, and at the time we didn't think anything of it because this little guy, like a lot of small dogs, he would eat just about anything, you know, and he could have eaten some semi-poisonous plant or you know, some rocks or whatever that just made his stomach upset, and he was throwing up because he went through phases of throwing up here and there like most dogs do. So we didn't think much of it, but by the next morning when we woke up, he was still throwing up and looking horrible, so we rushed him to the vet's office, and they took blood samples and stuff and said that he had antifreeze in his blood. And, you know, we had one of the few houses with a fenced-in yard, and we know that he was in it. There were no leaky cars sitting in driveways that he could have gotten to and licked it up. You know, dogs will eat or drink antifreeze if you present it to them because it has a sweet smell and taste. You don't have to force a dog to drink it. He'll happily drink it because it smells and tastes like something good. But he was in a fenced-in backyard, far away from garages or driveways or anything where he could have gotten a hold of it. And doing the research on antifreeze poisoning for dogs, it takes a couple hours for the symptoms to show up. I think it was like 2 to 3 hours, which from when he started throwing up the night before was just perfectly timed with when they were in the yard and we were all out to dinner. So the bottom line is that, you know, we didn't catch it early enough. Maybe if we'd taken him in the night before, they could have pumped his stomach and saved him, but this little guy ate so much random shit that he was throwing up here and there anyway, so we didn't see any cause for alarm until the next morning. We took him in, and they basically said, like, it was in his blood. It wasn't just in his stomach anymore, and it was too late to save him. So we ended up having to put him down, just to put him out of his suffering, because he was just extremely limp and weak and having trouble breathing and couldn't walk anymore and whatever. And I mean, he was only like 2 years old, like our other dog, our big dog that we still have. So obviously, I mean, that was pretty traumatic, and my whole life I've almost felt more of a connection to animals, dogs in particular, than people. Just, I don't know, they're unconditional love, and they're just fun and playful, and just, I don't know. I don't need to explain. I'm sure other dog people understand what I mean. So all we could think of, since he was in a fenced-in yard, was that some fucking psycho, was pissed off because he was barking a lot, or who knows what it could have been, and just gave him some. There had been reports, I think from about 10 years ago, that some other crazy person here in Truckee went around like poisoning dogs with antifreeze, and he managed to like kill 10 or 15 of them before somebody caught him. And he paid a big fine and went to prison for 6 months or something for animal cruelty, whatever the sentence is. And I guess we heard from several locals that what happened is he got out of prison back then, and a bunch of local dog lovers basically kept threatening him and pestering him and whatever until he was basically driven out of town. But anyway, that was 10 years ago. So it obviously wasn't this guy, but the point is, it could happen, and we spent a long time trying to logistically figure out how the hell else he could have gotten antifreeze that day. He was in the yard or in the house all day. We didn't take him out for a walk that day. We were all out biking, and they were in the yard or in the house, and they were in the yard when we went to dinner. He didn't escape the yard. He was still in the yard when we got back. The yard was not near any automotive supplies. They were in the garage, completely disconnected. So all we could think of was that it was some psychotic person, and we went around warning all our neighbors, and at the same time trying to figure out, if one of them seemed suspicious. Because a lot of other people in our neighborhood had dogs and didn't even have fences for them, and they would just wander around. But we never really got to the bottom of it, never really figured it out, but, that happened in July or August of 2011. So obviously, still having another dog and being now super paranoid that there was some crazy dog-hating person in our neighborhood, we had to move again. Really didn't want to move after just moving all our stuff from Southern California to Northern California the summer before, but we decided we had to move again. So that September, when our lease was up, because we only signed a 1-year lease, we went around looking for another place, and the only place we could find that was within our price range, that fit our needs, having a room that I could use for my office since I work from home and whatever else, was this house we're in now, which does not have a fenced-in yard, because we were in such a hurry to move out. We didn't have the time to really drag it out and wait until a place became available that fit all our needs. So this fit most of our needs. It just didn't have the fenced-in yard. So then we packed up all our stuff and moved here with our one dog. So the summer of 2011, started out okay, but it started so late, the bike season started so late anyway because of the massive amounts of snow, that I really only got a few weeks of good mountain biking in before this horrible thing happened with our dog. And then shortly after that, maybe a week or two later, I tried going biking again, and who knows if it has anything to do with it, but probably because I was still very affected by that and distracted. I was trying to go out and live my life and have a good time and bike and do what I loved, but I was probably still really affected by that, and I had a crash where I thankfully didn't break anything, but went over the handlebars on a good 20-foot jump or so, and scraped up my forearms pretty bad. I'll add some pictures here in the video. And then shortly after that, we found this house and had to move again. So not only were there some traumatic events that summer, but it was a very short summer for Truckee standards anyway. And I liked snowboarding, but I was new at it. What I moved here for mainly was mountain biking, and I barely got any mountain biking that summer because it started late, and then the dog thing, and then it took several weeks to pack up our stuff and move to a new house and unpack it and set it all up. And since I work from home, that meant during that time I couldn't work either until we had moved and gotten our internet connection set up here, and I had set up my whole workstation again before I could tell it's not my employer, whatever you call it, when I get work from them as a contractor, tell them that I'm ready to take on work again. And the snow in the fall of 2011 started pretty early too. We had our first good storm in October, which was actually earlier than the first big storm the year before, the record-breaking year. So barely got any biking that summer. I was bummed out about that and still depressed about losing my favorite little dog. I love our big dog too, but I was always more connected to this little one. So that was kind of shitty. So then here we were in this house, and we always liked the idea of having two dogs. So we were thinking about getting another one, and actually around the time we were thinking about it, my girlfriend happened to find a puppy that had been abandoned in a cardboard box by the side of the road, tied to a street sign or whatever, and the box just said like free on it. Didn't even say free puppy, just free. And she happened to be driving home one day and saw it and pulled over and kind of rescued this dog. And we weren't quite ready to get a new dog yet. We still hadn't really gotten over the loss of the last one, but kind of seemed like it was meant to be or whatever. We contemplated taking this dog to the Humane Society after feeding him and giving him a place to sleep in a house instead of a cardboard box on the side of the road. I think it was around October, and it's getting pretty cold up here already. So we ended up deciding to keep him. And so we kept this other dog, had two dogs again, slowly but surely, moving forward in life and getting over the difficult things that had happened and whatever. And then that winter turned out to be one of the most mild winters that Truckee has had in many years. I think over 20 years this time, so not as record-breakingly minor as the previous one was record-breakingly major, but still pretty mild and crappy. Snowboarding was shitty. We got a couple storms here and there, but they were so few and far between, and it was still cold, so everything would just ice over, and it'd be like snowboarding on ice, which is, dangerous and painful if you fall, and not very fun, and no good powder, and so that was kind of a shitty winter for snowboarding anyway. And then after that winter was over, I'm going to get back to some specifics of other things that happened that winter in a minute, but I want to kind of finish the dog part first, since that's apparently the tangent I went off on now. That winter ended early. I mean, by the time it was May, it was already feeling like summer, and biking was possible and whatever. So in May is actually when I decided, and this is finally going to get to some trial-specific stuff, because I know a lot of my subscribers are just from my Trials HD Ninja replays. In May, I finally decided that, I kind of have a problem getting addicted to video games. It seems silly to say. Never had any problems getting addicted to substances. If I'm being honest, I smoke once in a while, drink once in a while. Never been tempted to do it a lot, just kind of socially, or I'll smoke sometimes when I get a new album to listen to because I'm really into music. But video games, I mean, especially an awesome game like Trials, or Super Meat Boy, or before those, my obsession was Guitar Hero. I get really into them. And while I would never directly sacrifice mountain biking time or snowboarding time or disc golfing time for video games, it happened indirectly a lot. over the year and a half that I'd lived in Truckee so far, where, I would sit down to play a little trials at 9 or 10 at night, and of course next thing I know it's like fucking 5 o'clock in the morning and I'm still trying to zero fault this track or whatever, and I finally go to bed, and then I wake up the next day, and if it's during the summer or whatever, then I don't get out and start biking till like 1 or 2 p.m. Or if it's in the winter, oh, I missed all the good powder. If we had a good storm or whatever, it's all torn up already. And I would still go out and go. I would never choose to stay home and play video games over going out, but a lot of times it one affected the other, because I would stay up way too late playing video games and couldn't pull myself away from them, mainly trials, since I moved here. So in May of this year, of 2012, once the mild winter ended, I kind of just made a decision, like, I'm going to stop playing video games all the time. I'm probably not going to get Trials Evolution as much as I want to, as great of a game as it looks like. I fucking moved here to enjoy the outdoors, to mountain bike and snowboard and disc golf and hike, and I already have a job that involves sitting in front of a computer and nothing else. So, what the hell is the point? I gotta stop this. So I decided at that point I still had some Trials HD goals left or whatever, but I just figured, nobody else is playing anymore. I can spread those out over the course of the next year or whatever. So I basically decided I'm going to stop playing video games all the time. And there was a period of time there in May where I didn't turn on my Xbox for like 3 weeks straight. And, I went out disc golfing and mountain biking every chance I had, and did my job and lived my life that way. And I kind of felt more happy and more fulfilled than I had in a long time. Then in July, again, I'm going to backtrack to cover some other things, but I want to finish up the dog thing, and I went off on another tangent there. Then in July, the second small dog that we had started throwing up and getting sick and whatever. And our big dog had something really similar a few months earlier, in April, I think it was, where he had eaten some plant that made him sick for a few days, and he had trouble keeping his food down, and he was throwing up and whatever. But he pulled through, and he was just fine again, a week after it happened. And our small dog's symptoms seemed really similar to that. And now, having had one dog poisoned by antifreeze before we knew what to look like, we knew what to look for. I guess with antifreeze poisoning, dogs start acting like they're drunk and they can't walk straight, and they kind of walk in wobbly lines and whatever. And we paid attention, and that didn't happen to our big dog in April, or our second small dog in July, I think it was. So we just assumed, he ate some plant he shouldn't have or whatever. He'll be throwing up for a couple days, and then he'll be okay. It's definitely not antifreeze poisoning. He's not declining as fast as our last dog did. And, we saw our big dog go through the same thing and pull through just fine. But a few days later, we woke up one morning and he had just passed away. So now 2 summers in a row, we had lost a dog. Which I just feel horrible about. Makes me feel like I'm an irresponsible or bad dog owner. Living with my parents growing up, we always had dogs. Naturally, that's what probably turned me into a dog person. And here I am as an adult trying to own my own dogs, and they're just dying on me left and right. And I try to rationalize and say, obviously the first one couldn't have possibly been my fault. We did everything we could to protect him, and had one of the few houses in Truckee with fences. Other people just fucking let their dogs run out on the roads or whatever and just hope that they don't get hit, because it's hard to find houses with fences up here. And then the second one, I guess, after some more research, what it turned out is he ate a poisonous plant called poison hemlock that normally doesn't grow very much up at this altitude. But since we were having an unusually long and unusually warm summer for this area, it was sprouting up in more places. And actually, less than a week after he died, my girlfriend said she heard them on the radio talking about it and warning locals that poison hemlock is sprouting up more plentifully than it normally does, and it's attractive to dogs, and it's attractive to little children that might put it in their mouth because I guess it smells sweet too, uh, and looks kind of like carrot greens or something. Maybe I'm totally wrong. I forget. But there was a warning that several other dogs had died from it around the time that ours did. And we just weren't expecting it. We didn't even know that there were poisonous plants around here up at 6,000 feet where it snows for half the year. It just didn't occur to either of us. So that was difficult to deal with. Not as difficult as our first small dog the year before, because there was also feelings of shit, some asshole did this on purpose, and what a fucked up person, and shit, we have to get out of this neighborhood, blah blah blah. And this time it was an unfortunate tragedy, but there was no psycho involved. Our dog just happened to eat a poisonous plant on his own and not be able to get it out of his system. So that's the dog situation. Now, a month ago or two, we got another small dog, and we still have her here with us, and everything's going fine with her so far, and we still have the same big dog that we've had for over 3 years now. So that's the dog thing. So since moving here, since pursuing my dream and moving here, that's been tough. And I think that covers that, so now I'm going to jump back a few years again and kind of cover a different aspect of challenges in my life right now. Actually, I'm going to jump back maybe 5 or 6 years, because back when I still lived in Southern California and I was just taking trips to go mountain biking and stuff, I think I was about 19 or 20, so 7 or 8 years ago. Took a trip up to Whistler for the summer, mountain biking for 2 weeks, having a great time. And I remember on one of the trails, Joyride, I was just riding over a small pile of rocks, trying to keep my speed up. And I did this thing, where I tucked my knees in and tucked my arms up to kind of help the bike's suspension absorb the awkward pile of rocks so I could stick to the ground and keep my speed up and be riding as smoothly as possible. And when I did that motion, tucking my knees up, I felt this pop in my lower back, and I was just in excruciating pain, and I had to just let myself fall over and just lay there at the side of the trail for a while, and finally managed to get down off the mountain and went to the emergency room and got x-rays, and my back was totally fucked up, and I was 19 or 20 or something. And the most confusing part to me was I'd been downhilling for many years by then. I by no means was a pro, but I was going off 10-foot drop-offs and huge jumps and really gnarly technical shit, and then the thing that threw my back out was this pathetic tiny little pile of rocks that I tried to absorb to keep my speed up. Like, what the hell is with that? So my back went out, my pelvis was like tilted, and in the emergency room the doctor had me sit up and lay down, and when I'd sit up, one foot would go out farther than the other, and I'd lay down, and then the other foot or the other leg would appear to be longer because my pelvis was out of alignment. So he did some adjustments on me, took x-rays, whatever, referred me to a chiropractor there in Whistler for the remainder of my stay. So half my Whistler trip that year was shot, but in the big picture, not a big deal, because I went there 2 weeks every summer for like 6 or 7 summers in a row when I was younger. That was the place I wanted to go. So he referred me to a chiropractor that I saw for the remainder of my Whistler stay, and then I went back home to Ojai, Southern California at the time, and saw a chiropractor there for another several weeks. And when it first happened, I was crawling around on the floor and I couldn't stand up straight, and I had stretches to do and icing it and whatever the doctors and chiropractors told me to do. And I'd say within about a month and a half, I was back to 100%, and everything was fine, and I was able to go back to mountain biking and everything else I liked. I mean, I was back home by then, so it was crappy little local trails But my back was fine. And it remained fine for several years after that. Then again in, I believe it was 2009, this is the only time in my life actually that my back going out has made sense to me. Um, I was just goofing off and I tried to pick up our big dog, who is a German Shepherd Great Dane mix. He weighs about 110 pounds. And I obviously did it in the most stupid way possible, bending at the waist and not at the knees and just awkwardly twisting and trying to pick him up, just messing around with him. He was fine with it, uh, but when I did that, my back went out again. And it was basically the same process. I had gone through it once before. I think it was not quite as bad this time, but almost. And I went through the same stuff. I knew what stretches to do, and I was icing it regularly and being careful with my movements and seeing a chiropractor again. And once again, took about a month, and I was good. Back to 100%, doing everything I wanted to do. Then, a couple more years go by. In September of 2010, my girlfriend and I move up here to Truckee, and first winter goes by, or first fall, some biking, first winter, tons of snowboarding, even though I was new at it. Second summer, had the thing with the dog, but my back was fine. Even after my crash that summer, my back was fine. Moved into this house, September of 2011. And then in December of 2011, I hadn't started snowboarding yet because it was the crappy mild winter and there wasn't even enough snow. Like Squaw Valley hadn't even opened yet. North Star had opened with a bunch of man-made snow, but it was getting all icy and shitty too. And besides that winter, my pass was for Squaw and Alpine. So hadn't done any sports or anything strenuous for it, and I just got out of the car. I just had driven home from the grocery store or something, I don't even remember. Got out of the car, and my back went out again, just instantly, and same feeling as before. But again, same thing. I saw a chiropractor up here, did my stretches, iced it, whatever. By the end of January, I was fine. My back was fine. All right, so those are the 3 times that it's gone out in similar ways. Well, the causes were different, but it felt similar, and it has similar recovery time and recovery process. So then going back to May of this year, when I kind of made a conscious decision to start playing video games less and getting outside more and doing what I moved here to do, it didn't go out the same way. It wasn't instant. It wasn't something where I felt like, oh, I did something wrong, even if it was something stupid, now it's out. I started biking and disc golfing a lot in May, and after a long day of downhill biking at North Star, I'd feel fine. I'd drive home, I'd feel fine, and a few hours later, I'd just get more and more stiff and more sore, to the point where I couldn't stand up straight, and I looked like, some old person with a hunchback and hanging on to hand railings and kitchen counters and whatever, just moving around the house. And I didn't see anyone for it at the time, because when this started happening, I would do the stretches I knew how to do from it going out before, and I would ice it and whatever, and within a day or two, I'd be back to feeling fine. Walking around normally and everything felt okay, but then if I'd go biking for the day again, the same thing would happen. I'd be fine during biking, and then later in the evening, I'd get worse and worse and worse, and go through the same process of taking a couple days to be able to walk upright again. I was 26 at the time, by the way. I turned 27 just a few weeks ago. So it seems pretty freaking young to be having such significant back problems. So then after this happened 2 or 3 times from mountain biking all day, then I kind of just realized, well, I got to give my back more time to heal. Maybe I'm getting back on the bike too soon. I may feel fine, but something might still be messed up in there or whatever. I'll take it a step down and, still not go back to video games. I'm going to use my free time for hiking and disc golfing and things that are more mild than downhill mountain biking. And that worked okay for 2-3 weeks. I'd go out disc golfing every chance I had. And then 2 or 3 weeks later, I guess we're into late June-ish by now, the same thing started happening. I'd go out and play around a disc golf and feel fine, and later in the evening, my back would get more and more stiff and go through the same freaking process. So after I tried that 2 or 3 times and realized it wasn't getting any better on its own, I mean, it would bounce back every time it happened, but I couldn't go out and do any exercise. I couldn't even go out and go on a hike without this happening much later in the day. Then I called a chiropractor and said, look, here's what's happening, and gave him the whole story I just gave you, with the backstory of the backstory, unintended, of how it went out 3 times before in different ways, but this summer it was doing this weird delayed reaction thing where I was recovering quicker, but it wasn't happening instantly, so I didn't even know what I did wrong that caused it, and whatever. So I saw this chiropractor for a while. He did some work on me, gave me stretches to do, and he did adjustments on me and whatever. And within a month or so of seeing him, I was back to being able to disc golf. Couldn't do more than 1 round per day, but I was back to being able to do it. And then his solution was, since I have a desk job where I sit at a computer all day, and I have hobbies that are extreme sports like snowboarding and downhill mountain biking, that I'm not building up my muscles. I didn't do any workout at all. I mean, I would get workouts, so to speak, from my activities and hikes and whatever, but I don't work out and try to strengthen specific muscle groups. So his solution was, strengthen your core, strengthen your back muscles, build more muscles around the problem area of your spine. It obviously made a lot of sense to me. So as soon as he got me to a point where I was able to do that, he started giving me an exercise routine to do that I would stick to and do every day and whatever, and try to strengthen my core, and I was doing good with that. And then one day he decided, okay, you're doing good with this, let's step it up a notch and give you some harder exercises to really start building up the muscles. And the first day I did those at the office with him, or at his practice or whatever, I came home later that evening, and it was the same delayed reaction thing where, I hadn't been disc golfing that day or done anything else. It was the second level exercises, if you will, that he gave me that caused me to go into that same delayed reaction thing where I just got more and more sore and more stiff and was crawling around by the end of the evening. And I didn't really bounce back from it this time. I actually developed some numbness in my toes and on the insides of my feet, which implies disc damage in the back. If you get a bulged disc between 2 of your vertebrae, it goes out backwards and pushes on the nerves that run down your spine to your legs, and there's all the science behind it and whatever. So after that, he basically tried to see me a couple more times free of charge. Nice of him, because he felt guilty for pushing me to the next level of exercises apparently before my body was ready. But my condition is so unique and weird that I could hardly blame him for not knowing, because as he told me, this was his normal routine that he would put people through who had lower back issues. And it didn't work for me, but it worked for all his other patients that had similar or the same symptoms. But so he saw me a couple more times free of charge and wasn't really able to get anywhere. And then he just decided he'd refer me to a physical therapist. So then I started seeing her doing decompression by hanging out in a pool on a noodle and just being weightless, so to speak, to allow my spine to stretch back out and for the disc to reabsorb, and doing electric stem and ice on my back. And she gave me a bunch of new stretches and exercises to do and whatever. And I was really, really slowly healing at that point. And after about a month of that, I kind of decided I need to try something more extreme than this. And my girlfriend found this place in Reno that specialized in chronic back pain and whatever. And they kind of combine chiropractic work and physical therapy and a number of other things, and come up with kind of a long-term plan and solution for their patients. So I went there maybe 2 months ago. They had x-rays and whatever, and turned out that I had some some disc damage in my very, very lower back, the lowest two vertebrae, whatever they're called, L1 and L2 or something, and that my pelvis was tilted forward a little bit. It wasn't lopsided like it was when it went out in Whistler. You know, my legs still appeared to be the same length when I was sitting or standing or whatever. It was more symmetrical. But so the pelvis was tilted, and I had not enough space between those two vertebrae at the bottom, and apparently also had some damage in my neck, even though I've never had any neck pain or symptoms or anything from that. But I had that as well. So now I've been going there, being treated for that with decompression therapy and various adjustments and ice and stem again and whatever. But you know, the thing that concerns me the most is that, you know, shit, if this is how my back is, and it started when I was 26, I turned 27 recently, if this is how my back is at this age, how the hell am I going to keep mountain biking and snowboarding until I'm in my 50s, which was what I dreamed of doing. You know, I know that doing extreme sports, you can't do them forever, but, you know, being out on the hill in the winter with my snowboard, you see older people on skis or whatever. I mean, I figured I wasn't going to be going down the double black runs at that age, but I was going to keep doing it. That was what I wanted to do, was do this until I was too old to do it anymore. And now I fucking feel like, you know, I finally made my childhood dream happen and pursued it at age 24, and by age 26 my fucking back is so messed up that I can't do any of the shit I moved here to do anyway. And you know, I'm trying to be positive and get through this and get through all my therapy and whatever, and once it's time, hopefully not jump into it too soon this time, but once it's time, get into an exercise routine and really strengthen my core and my back and do whatever I have to do. A lot of people have recommended, you know, yoga for the back. I've also gotten a standing desk. It's not here yet. It's actually downstairs in pieces. I can't lift anything. I can't pick up stuff off the floor. My back is still pretty messed up now. I can walk around comfortably, but there's not much I can do. I mean, so I have some friends coming up this weekend to help me swap it out and assemble it and move all my stuff onto it. Because apparently, you know, sitting for 8 hours a day doing a computer job is not good for anyone, and especially someone like me who enjoys doing extreme sports in their spare time. So hopefully that'll help. But the bottom line is, you know, people that have back problems, they can last for the duration of their life. They come and they go and whatever, but now, even if a year from now I'm recovered and feel good enough to go biking or snowboarding or whatever again, I just feel like I'm going to be constantly paranoid about potentially messing up my back again. You know, I've looked on some mountain bike forums and tried to see if other downhill mountain bikers have suffered similar injuries to mine and have made full recoveries and gone back to downhill mountain biking, and they didn't have to, you know, downgrade to cross country or road biking or something else that I'm not that interested in, at least at this point in my life. And it seems like many people have gone through similar things and made full recoveries. You know, people were saying, you know, they would still get mildly sore sometimes from riding, but were still able to pretty much ride whatever they wanted, and, you know, confirmed what a lot of the chiropractors or physical therapists or whoever I've seen said, that, you know, core strengthening is really the key to preventing it from going out again. So I'm determined to do it, but it's just a frustrating time. You know, in May I decided, yeah, I have a problem getting addicted to video games. This is stupid. I'm wasting too much of my life away on them. I'm gonna stop doing that and go out and do the things that I want to do the things that I moved here to do. And then immediately my back is like, fuck you, no you're not. And, you know, so at first I was disc golfing or whatever, but then I stopped being able to do that, and then I stopped being able to hike, and then I stopped being able to do anything. So, that's why I'm still uploading Trials HD replays at the same rate as I ever have, and still playing that game way too much, because at this point, I kind of just don't know what else to do with myself when I don't have work or whatever. I mean, I get really sore just walking 2 blocks down the street at this point, or at least a few weeks ago I did. I feel like I'm a little better now, but I'm weary of trying that again. I get sore from sitting on a hard chair. If we go to a restaurant that doesn't have booths, sitting on a hard chair and being hunched over a table and eating. So I eat at home and I stand up to eat, because standing is the one thing that doesn't hurt it. So anyway, that's where my back is at now. Trying to be positive, trying to tell myself that I will eventually get back to doing the things that I love, but a part of me in the back of my head is saying, like, you may never do that stuff again. You may have to take up cross-country skiing or, you know, cross-country biking, and cut out the extreme stuff. But I just, at this point in my life, I'm not ready to accept that. You know, I accepted that I might have to make sacrifices like that once I was in my 40s or 50s, but not fucking 2 years after I moved here for these things. So that's my back. Then the next thing, I'm not going to go into too much detail about this, because this one is probably the most personal out of everything, but I'll just hit a few bullet points, if you will, I guess. 9 years ago, when I still lived at home, it was the year before I moved out of my parents' house, my dad was diagnosed with aggressive prostate cancer, and his doctors at the time gave him 4 to 5 years, and he was always heavy on doing research on his own and trying to find the best treatments for himself, getting second, third, fourth opinions on everything, and, you know, trying new experimental treatments and whatever. And as a result, he lived much longer than his doctors expected him to. I think he made it to about 9 years. But he passed away about a month ago now. You know, while we were already going through the loss of our second dog, and I was already going through a really hard time physically with my back and psychologically, because of my back, you know, trying to come to terms with the fact that, shit, here I am at 26, it's still 26 back then, and I might have to completely change my lifestyle and completely give up on these goals I had and dreams I had in life. I might not, I don't know, but, you know, and there's obviously a lot more surrounding losing my dad than I'm going to go into here. I feel like that's definitely too personal to talk about on the internet. You know, I can talk about the things that happened with our dogs and the difficult shit that's happening with my back, but I'm not going to go into too much detail with that. But suffice it to say that, you know, that was one more thing, probably the biggest thing of them all, happening at the same time as everything else. And then the final thing I'm going to go into that also caused a lot of stress this summer was, remember I said when we moved into this house, our second Truckee house, we had short notice because we wanted to get out of that other house where somebody poisoned our dog, supposedly. And so we moved here to this house without a fence because we couldn't find anything with a fence on such short notice that met our needs, and had a landlord that was okay with a Great Dane German Shepherd, our big dog, you know, and German Shepherds, a lot of landlords get weary of them. So then earlier this summer, before my back got really bad, we were planning to move again in September, and we planned that all along. This house was a temporary solution to get out of our old neighborhood, but we still really wanted a place with a fence. We felt bad for having to leave our dogs in the house all day when we went to do something, or bad for ourselves if we had something that took too long. We'd have to come back, you know, halfway through our daily activities to let them out to go to the bathroom. So it's a pain in the ass for us, and it's not very nice for them, and whatever. So earlier this summer, I told our current landlord, you know, we're thinking about moving out when our lease is up in September, because we really would like to get a fence for our dogs. And the house we're in now here is in an HOA, that's a homeowners association, which means there are all kinds of rules and regulations some good, some bad, in my opinion. You know, like people aren't allowed to have old broken down cars on their lawns or whatever. That's probably good because that, you know, always makes a neighborhood look more trashy, things like that. Nobody's allowed to have mailboxes because they're unsightly. So we have, you know, group mailboxes at the bottom of the street or whatever. Everybody has to drive down and get their mail there. Minor pain in the ass, but not a big deal. And then the other thing is, fences are not allowed, but they are heavily regulated. And if you want to build a fence, you have to put together the plans and get it approved by the HOA and your neighbors, and get it reapproved every year, and it has to be a certain type, and you know, whatever, the list goes on. It's complicated. So I basically just assumed that our landlord here didn't want to go through that trouble. I mean, in this neighborhood, you drive around and you see, like, I think I've seen one house with a fence. Nobody wants to deal with it in this neighborhood. So I didn't even approach her with that idea. I just said, look, we're thinking about moving out because we would like a fence for our dogs. And she said, oh, well, I'll look into building a fence for you if you'll consider staying for another year. Because, you know, I guess we're good renters. We always pay our rent on time, take good care of the house, don't throw big parties in it, whatever. Things that a landlord likes. So she wanted to try to keep us here. So she said she'd look into building a fence. That was like back in June or July or something. I think it was shortly after we lost the second dog, but we were still thinking about getting another little one eventually because we like having two and they keep each other company and whatever. So she said she'd look into building us a fence, and got the rules and regulations and plans from the homeowners association, and you know, basically there were two fence types allowed: wrought iron and chain link. And she said right off the bat she couldn't afford wrought iron because it's expensive, and I said that's fine, I don't care if the fence is a little ugly, you know, we just would like to be able to leave our dogs in the yard during the day. Obviously not in the middle of winter up here, but with all the snow, but during the summer and spring and early fall, it's just really nice to be able to do that, or let them out to go to the bathroom and not worry about them chasing a squirrel out into the road or whatever. So she basically agreed to submitting plans to the HOA for a chain link fence around our front yard area, because that's where the door to outside goes, and said she was going to come up with her son, who's a contractor, and look at the yard and kind of plan out where it was going to go and stuff. And that got delayed and got delayed and got delayed, and eventually, like a month and a half later, when it was already past September 1st, when our lease was already up, she contacted me and basically said, like, yeah, I'm going to sell the house next year after you guys move out, and I don't want to have an ugly chain link fence in front of the house because it'll decrease the market value and appeal of the house and blah, 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 all these reasons that made sense. But why did she wait a month and a half? You know, we could have still moved out and found another place, but now our current lease was up. Some of the good rentals we had seen before that had fences had already been rented by somebody else, and then she basically just said, well, your last lease is up, it's already a week or two into September, you're going to have to sign another lease, or I'm going to have to give you a 30-day notice, and I'm not going to build a fence because I don't want an ugly fence. Well, then it's like, why the fuck did you lead us to believe that you would? You know, we knew all along that the HOA might not approve it, but we were willing to take that chance. So, bottom line, we couldn't really move anyway because some of the good rentals were already snatched up by somebody else, and if we did take the chance and say, oh yeah, we're going to move, if we didn't find something that fit us in 30 days, then we'd be totally fucked because she was going to give us a 30-day notice and kick us out or whatever. Not to mention the fact that my back was really bad by then. It wasn't in June. You know, I could have probably handled moving if I had friends help with the big pieces of furniture. But at that point, in September, and as it still is now, you know, I can't even pack a box. I can't even pick up a chair without getting excruciating pain in my back. So moving would have been a huge hassle. We would have had to contact a moving company and whatever, and she knew about my back problems. I talked to her about them. So what it seems like to me was she wanted to ensure that she had renters that would pay rent on time, in her house for the final year before she was planning to sell it next summer, and she knew we were going to move out to get a fence, so she fucking lied about being really gung-ho and whatever about trying her very best to get a fence built for us so we would stay here, and delayed and procrastinated until it was too late and said, oh, by the way, never mind, I'm not going to. Oh, and by the way, sign a lease or I'm going to kick you out. So here we are in the same house still with no fence until next May. We managed to not sign another full year lease till September, so I hope by May that the roads will be dry enough, snow free enough to drive a U-Haul and move somewhere else. But for now, we're still stuck here, and in the middle of the winter, I still have to stand out there in the freezing cold. If the dogs happen to need to go out to go to the bathroom at 2 a.m., to keep an eye on them to make sure they don't run out in the road or whatever. And if we need to do something all day, then they have to stay in the house. And if it takes too long, we gotta come back halfway through what we're doing and let them out to go to the bathroom and put them back in the house when. Whatever, and we could have been in another house if we had just moved in June or committed to moving once our lease was up. But so she heavily misled us and whatever. That's the thanks we get for being good renters, I suppose. So there's that. So there's, losing 2 dogs and my back problems that had been there on and off for most of my adult life, but getting significantly worse this summer by a lot. Landlord screwing us over. Losing my dad after a 9-year battle with prostate cancer. And then the final thing, which again is probably personal, like my dad, so I'm not going to say much, but even though I have these back problems and all this shit going wrong, I still love it up here. I love it up in the mountains. I like living in an area with extreme weather. It's exciting to wake up and see 2 feet of fresh snow outside. Or just be outside in the 20-degree weather or whatever in January or February when it's coldest, being all bundled up and whatever. I actually was a little worried with my severe back problems now that when it started snowing this fall that I would just be really sad and bummed out, like seeing all the fresh snow and knowing I can't get on my snowboard and go enjoy it. But last week we got our first snowstorm, and it was actually pretty huge for being the first snowstorm of the year. We got almost 3 feet. And the minute I looked outside and saw it, even while it was snowing, it became clear to me, like, even though I can't go enjoy this weather, I still just fucking love it here. This is just awesome. I want to stay here, even if I can't take advantage of the sports I used to do for now or for a long time, or who knows how that's going to pan out. But I still love it here. And here's the personal part that I'm not going to go into too much detail over, but since we moved here, my girlfriend really doesn't love it here the way I love it here. She likes nature and outdoors and hiking and disc golfing as much as I do, but that's all the summer stuff. The living in a mountain town, in a ski resort town, the winters stress her out. She doesn't like the extreme cold. She doesn't like driving in the snow. That's scary to me. Yeah, sure, it's dangerous, but it's exciting. It's not scary. It's fun. Like taking a turn too fast and accidentally sliding sideways and having to correct and whatever. Like, it gives me the same fucking adrenaline rush that mountain biking and snowboarding gives me. I love it. And I can't blame her for not loving it the same way I do. Most people don't. That's why it's a vacation destination. People from Sacramento and Reno come up here on holiday weekends to go skiing with their family or whatever, but they don't want to live here. They don't want to live in a place where it snows for 6 months out of the year. And, she kind of doesn't either. And I feel like a lot of it is that she's just staying here for my sake, and it feels unbalanced, and I feel guilty about it. And again, I'm not going to go into too much detail on that, but so that's another difficult thing that's happening now is, I just feel like I either have to give up living in the place I want to go somewhere where she can be happy, or she has to give up being happy for half the year to live in the place that I want to live. And, it's not that she's unhappy for half the year, but the snow driving and whatever, it stresses her out and stuff. I guess that's pretty much it. So hopefully I feel a little better after getting all this off my chest and uploading it. I'm not sure how I'll feel about sharing some of these personal things online, but I think that's the gist of it. Basically, I just feel like I had a dream that became well established when I was 12 or 13 years old, and when I was 24, I finally pursued it and completely made it happen. Moving here, and then it just feels like ever since I moved here, just the first year went okay, but the second year and a little into the third year now, third year starting in September, I guess, it's just like one thing after another is just going horribly wrong, and life is just beating me down, and it's like, you pursued your dream, good for you, well, fuck you, but hopefully I get through it. Alright, so of course as soon as I stopped recording, I immediately started thinking of things that I wanted to talk about that I had somehow missed. Because there was a lot to cover and I didn't have any bulleted list or anything, or prep work or anything, planning what I wanted to talk about. I just kind of started rambling and let it go where it went. So the few things that I still want to talk about that I forgot about in that first part are, I think I mentioned that what got me into mountain biking in the first place was being invited on a trip when I was 12 or 13 with my friend and his dad going to Mammoth, doing downhill mountain biking there. And that friend, it's my best friend from childhood. We've known each other since we were like 3 years old. Grew up together, playing video games together, mountain biking together. He's also the one who took me on that one snowboarding trip I went on when I was 15-ish. Then, after high school, like I said, I decided to take the route of pursuing a career that would allow me to spend as much time as possible and have the money to do the hobbies I loved and live where I wanted to live, to do them as much as possible. And, he kind of took the opposite approach and picked a career that he was really passionate about, which I really admire. Sometime when he was a teenager, he decided he wanted to be a chef. So after high school, he went off to culinary school for several years, got a degree in culinary arts, and went to work at a place in San Francisco after that. And, while I am happy for him and I admire his drive to succeed at his career of choice that he's very passionate about, having a career in the culinary world takes up a lot of your life. So I obviously saw him a lot less after that. I saw him a few times a year when he was going to school in New York. And then after school, I still saw him 3, 4, 5 times a year for weekends and whatever. He'd come up here to Truckee from San Francisco to go mountain biking in the summer or snowboarding in the winter or whatever. And something we had talked about for several years was the possibility of him moving up here temporarily and living with me and my girlfriend for a year, and still have some sort of cooking job up here, just to kind of go mountain biking and snowboarding and whatever as much as we could, and kind of relive our childhoods in that way, if you will. And in May of this year, 2012, he did it, and he'd been planning to do it for a few years, and he'd given notice at his job in San Francisco. And, obviously a small mountain town like Truckee does not have the same opportunities for building up your career as a chef as a place like San Francisco or Chicago or LA or New York does. So the idea was always that it would be temporary, because he's passionate about establishing himself as a chef, working at really reputable places, and eventually working towards opening his own restaurant, which again is great. So he knew that he was kind of slowing that process down by moving up here, but the plan was to just do it for a year, work at whatever restaurant he could get a job at up here, and focus more on enjoying the hobbies that him and I have shared since we were kids. So he did that in May, after not years, but after probably about a year of planning and committing to it and kind of making it happen. So he's our roommate right now. So, while all this shit has been happening with my back, my back started getting bad in June, it got worse in July, worse again in August, to the point now where I can't bike, I can't disc golf, I can't do anything. Maybe I'll eventually get back to all that stuff again, I don't know. But even if I do, all this is happening during this limited time, this 1 year that we were supposed to have together to enjoy biking and snowboarding and whatever, every opportunity we had. When he had a better job or whatever in San Francisco, he would come up sometimes, but in a job like that, it's hard to find time off, and obviously he was farther away, so he'd have to take a few days off to come up. He couldn't just go in the morning before work or go on, if he had 1 day off in the middle of the week, he couldn't come up and go. And now living here, obviously he can, but now I can't do shit. So that's another thing that's bumming me out. If I had to go through this shit with back problems, why did it have to happen during this year that I had been looking forward to for years, and I think he'd been looking forward to as well. Now, he might actually stay another year, which he's been talking about a little bit recently, but I won't go into that. I don't want to start revealing personal things about someone other than myself. But obviously I hope he does, and I hope that my back gets better, so at least next summer and next winter we can go biking and snowboarding again. My chiropractor now has said I probably won't be able to go snowboarding at all this season. I really should focus on my recovery and doing stretches and going through the decompression therapy that I'm doing for the disc damage in my back, and then after that focus on really strengthening my muscles and whatever before I try to hop back on the snowboard or back on the bike again. But so that's yet another thing that's kind of just everything just culminated and happened all at the same time. And whether or not he stays for an extra year, once he's done living up here and he either goes back to San Francisco or goes to LA or somewhere where he feels like he can more actively pursue his career, which definitely is true. I mean, he's not progressing at the rate he would like to, working at a country club up in the mountains, as he would be if he worked at a really upscale restaurant in a big city like those that I mentioned. But yeah, I mean, whether or not he stays an extra year, once he goes back to that, it's going to probably, for me, go back to only seeing him a few times a year and not being able to do this stuff that much, which, I accept, and I'm still happy for him, and especially I admire that he has the drive to really pursue a career in something he's passionate about, especially since I'm the complete opposite. I have a career in something I find to be boring as hell. I have no passion at all for the work. I make sure to do a good job and whatever because I want to keep this work because of all the benefits it has on the side, making my own hours, living where I want, funding my semi-expensive hobbies, etc., etc. So anyway, that's happening at the same time. And on that note, since I just mentioned my job, the other thing I kind of wanted to touch back on was, I said when I was 18 or whatever, coming out of high school, I made the decision to go down this path where I would look for a career that would allow me to do what I wanted to do in my spare time rather than a career that I'm passionate about. And therefore, whether I worked in the office or worked as a contractor, my motivation for getting through my work for the day or for the week or whatever has always been, if I get through this ahead of time, or if I get through this ahead of schedule, I can go out and ride my bike for 3, 4, 5 days in a row, or my snowboard, or go out disc golfing or whatever, before I take on my next project. And then that would really just encourage me to go for it and get the work done. And now obviously I'm stuck with the same job, And right now with my back problems, I feel like I have nothing to look forward to. It's harder for me to focus on getting my work done because, you know, I lost, at least temporarily for now, I've lost everything that motivated me to get through my work. Of course, I still need to make a living and pay rent and pay bills and whatever, so I'm doing it. But it's tough having a job that I don't give a shit about during this time where I'm not benefiting from it in the way that I've always done before, that has motivated me to stick with it and keep doing it. So that was my friend and my job. And then the final thing I wanted to touch on, which I can't believe I forgot to touch on in the first part of this video, is music. The one thing that I've always been passionate about in my life outside my hobbies, sports, activities, whatnot, is music. Obviously, a lot of you know I write my own electronic music. I've done so since I was 15. And in the last few years, even when my back was fine and everything was going great, I kind of lost the motivation to write more. I think there were a lot of factors involved in that. The most prominent one for me has always been that the public in general, in this day and age, with the internet, with how easy pirating is, just everybody seems to feel entitled to free music. You know, I don't expect everyone to love my music. In fact, I don't care if 1% of the people who hear my music like it and the other 99% feel like it's shit. That doesn't affect me. What always affected me was when I would get feedback from someone on a YouTube video or through my website or whatever. Hey man, you know, I really love your music and I really like this one song in particular and it's so great and whatever. And I would respond and say, oh, I'm really glad you like the music. Thank you very much for supporting me. You know, that song and the full album, if you're interested, is available for purchase on CD here or digital download here or whatever. And you know, there's always been the few people that have supported me, and I'm very grateful for that. But the majority of people, even ones that give overwhelmingly positive feedback, would write back to a message like that and say, well, can I download it for free somewhere? Or can you put the full song on YouTube, please? Or whatever. And it just drives me crazy. And it's not because I ever expected to make a living off of writing obscure electronic music. I mean, that's never going to happen. I decided to write music in some obscure sub-genre of electronic music because that's the music I fell in love with, and that's the music I had inside of me, to sound corny. But all I wanted was to know that there were, you know, a handful of people out there that liked the same kind of music and that were willing to shell out 99 cents to pay for a song that they liked. And it's not because I want that 99 cents, it's because I want to know that there are people out there that appreciate my music enough to spend 99 cents on a song or $10 on an album instead of going out and spending $10 on beer or coffee or whatever else people buy that's not necessary. But it seems like in this day and age, even people that claim to absolutely love the music, they just still feel entitled to have it for free. You know, music has become like fucking air or water or whatever, that people just feel like even their favorite band in the world, they go and just, you know, torrent it or download it somewhere or whatever they do. And just that mentality has just driven me crazy and kind of put me off from writing music anymore. And it's not only from a selfish standpoint, like I want people to appreciate my music and pay for it. It goes towards all music, really. Like, you know, I won't blame anyone if they like Metallica or they like Eminem or, you know, Justin Bieber, whatever, and they go fucking download the music for free. That's fine. Those artists don't need the money. They obviously make a living from music, and are very wealthy as a result, and then it's not a big deal. But in the world of music that I'm interested in, all these obscure subgenres of electronic music, most of the artists I'm into, they still have day jobs too, even when they have official releases on a label. You know, they are lucky to sell a couple thousand copies of an album. They can't make a living off of that. They certainly do better than me, but they don't make a living. And music like that, whether it's electronic or obscure indie rock or whatever, you know, this mentality has made it so up and coming artists or artists that are as successful as they will ever be because their music is just obscure and aimed at a very narrow demographic of people, they can never make a living doing it. And you know, they have, you know, 99 people download it illegally for free for every one that purchases it. And it just seems like the public doesn't understand how this is affecting artists that are less than world famous by now. Recently, actually, I happened to watch an old episode of South Park, which really addressed the issue of music piracy pretty well, and in a funny way too, obviously. Is an old episode making fun of back in the day when Lars Ulrich, the drummer for Metallica, was very against music piracy and whatever, so that bands could still make a living and whatever. And of course, South Park being South Park, poking fun at stereotypes and whatever. The whole message behind the episode was that, oh no, it's going to make really wealthy music stars slightly less wealthy if people pirate their music. And you know, and it also made the point that, yeah, people pirate the music, but artists still make a lot of money from live gigs and merchandise and whatever. And it was a funny episode. You know, I love South Park, but it addressed the whole thing from a rock band perspective or metal band or whatever. And the thing about electronic music is that, you know, a live gig for most artists is just not possible. It's not something that you can do and go play live. You know, a live electronic music event involves DJing usually, and I'm not here to diss DJing. You know, I know it takes skill and it is an art form in and of itself, but it's usually different people. You know, the people that are sitting in their studios writing the music, and the DJs that then take that music and go mix it all together in a set in a live event and sell tickets to the concert or whatever. Usually those DJs are not the ones that actually spent time writing the music. They take other people's music, mix it together in a set, and then make money off of it, because live shows are what make money. You can't pirate live shows, and people like to go to live shows, even if DJing isn't really live like a band can be live. So the result is that, you know, I feel like DJs and electronic music artists alike should be making half the money each that there is to be made from the electronic music scene, but that's not how it works. DJs make fucking 95% of the money, and the actual artists make 5%. And obviously there are artists who write music and also DJ and make more of a living going that way, but yeah, I've never had much of an interest in DJing, and I know there's a lot of other electronic music artists that are the same way, and it's just completely impossible to make any money doing it. And you know, again, I said my genre is so obscure that I never expected to make a living. I never hoped for that, but just the mentality that people feel entitled to free music no matter how much they love it has just driven me crazy. That you know, to the point that when I am into an artist that I like or whatever, I'll buy the album on CD. I have a whole rack full of CDs right here, or if it's digital only, I will pay to download it. It's not because I'm too stupid to use Google or BitTorrent and spend 5 seconds to find it for free. I know it's easy, but that's not the fucking point. The point is that when you get out of the realm of mainstream music, it's just, nobody seems to understand that artists like that are struggling, and they could really use the support. So the reason I'm going into this music thing so much is, right now, with my stupid back problems, I I can't motivate myself to get through my work ahead of schedule or whatever to go out and ride my bike or disc golf or snowboard or hike or whatever. But the one thing I still could do is sit here and work on music. You know, I can play the keyboard, whatever. I can do sequencing work. But I just kind of lost the motivation to do that. You know, the other thing musically that I'm interested in is playing the drums. I have a drum set right here. I think it's off camera. You can't really see it. It's a digital drum set, but my back problems are so bad that I can't even do that right now. If I sit in a chair, I have to have back support. I can't sit on a drum stool and be rotating back and forth and hunched over and hitting things, and not to mention, you know, moving my legs is difficult too with my back problems. So using the hi-hat and the kick drum and whatever, just lifting my foot up and down, I can't even do that repeatedly, so I can't play the drums right now either. But I could still write electronic music, and you know, I don't know if this is going to work or not, or affect my viewpoint on it, but something I decided to do recently is to just try to accept the way that the general public views music, and how 99% of people seem to feel entitled to getting whatever music they like for free. Because as much as it drives me crazy, I know that it's not going to change. As time goes on and the internet evolves further, it's only going to become easier, and you know, other art forms are going to start following suit too. You know, people pirate movies and stuff these days too, but less so than music, just because it's harder to do it. It's harder to rip a DVD. It takes a lot longer to download, you know, a 1080p movie than it does to download a music album. But, you know, 5, 10, 15 years from now, that's going to be completely in the same boat as music. So in order to just at least give myself a chance to embrace the way the world seems to look at it, because it's not going to change, I've decided that I'm going to put all of my own songs in full on YouTube for free for anybody to listen to, if they want. And, you know, I'll put links in the descriptions to pay for them through iTunes, or buy them on CD or wherever else they're available. And so what if a video gets, you know, a video of one of my songs gets 500 views and 2 people actually pay for it, you know? I'm trying to convince myself that that's not the point. That the point is that writing music in the past is something that gave me joy, and I shouldn't let the world's mentality about entitlement of free music affect that. And hopefully in doing this, and at least seeing more positive comments and whatever, regardless of how many people are actually willing to shell out 99 cents for a song or $10 for an album, will maybe motivate me to get back into writing music. Because I feel like for right now, while my back is messed up and I can't enjoy any of my other hobbies, you know, I'm just working and watching TV and playing video games, or playing Trials still nothing else. So shortly after I post this video, I'm going to start uploading my songs, and instead of doing them all at once, I thought it'd be fun to do like one per day, starting from my oldest album. Back when I was like 15, I did an album that was really horrible, and I never actually released it other than a free download. I don't want anybody to have to pay for music that's that old and horrible. But I'll just start from the beginning, you know, track 1, album 1, and just do one song a day, going through all the songs I've written between then and now. Should be a fun little project, and I'm hoping that it'll motivate me to start doing that again, because I think it'd be good for me right now to have something fun to look forward to once I finish work for the day or for the week or whatever, that's not just sitting on the couch and playing video games or watching Netflix. So I'm pretty sure that's all I wanted to cover at this point. Covered job and dogs and back problems and dad and girlfriend and friend who's cooking and music, and that's pretty much it. You know, I have no idea if getting all this off my chest and just ranting about it to a camera will make me feel any better in the long run, but it's worth a shot. You know, it always feels good to just rant for a while. All right, guys. To those of you who've actually made it to the end of this, I know that even once I edit this together, it's probably going to be close to an hour long. So congratulations for making it, and thanks for watching and listening to my rant. Thanks to everyone who's supported my music over the years and all my Trials HD uploads. I know a lot of my subscribers are from Trials HD videos, and I know a lot of you are disappointed that I'm not getting Trials Evolution. So I guess I should touch on that a little bit more. I mentioned it a little earlier, but you know, right now I am still playing video games a lot, but it's only because my back is healing at such a painstakingly slow rate that I can't go out and do what I want to do. After May, when I decided to drastically cut down my video game time, you know, I was assuming that I would finish up my Trials HD goals here and there over the next year and spend 95% of my free time being outside doing what I liked. And then my back got worse and worse and worse, and I could do less and less of what I wanted to do, and I started playing more and more again and eventually finished my goals and then just continued to play. But the reason that I'm still choosing to not move on to Trials Evolution, even for now, while my back is still bad, is because you know, I know my own tendencies, and while I won't miss out on any biking or snowboarding now while my back is bad if I'm playing Trials Evolution a lot, you know, if you look at Red Lynx's track record, they release one new game like every 3 years. And I'm just worried that if I buy the game and start getting really into it, and then 6 months from now, or 9 months from now, or a year from now, my back is healed enough that I can either do everything I want again, or at least hike and disc golf again, and maybe do more mild mountain biking or whatever, that then I already have the game and I'm already involved with the community, and there's so many great track creators that, you know, I would feel like every time they put out a new track, I would have to try it and get platinum or get 0 faults or whatever, because, you know, my personality is such that once I start something, it's hard for me to stop it. And Evolution looks awesome. You know, I'd really like to be a part of that community like I was with Trials HD, but I made a decision back in May, and I know it looks like I'm not sticking to it since I'm still uploading Trials HD replays like crazy. I mean, 0 faulting several level 3s and a handful of level 2s over the course of a month. I mean, that's probably just as much playtime as I ever had before. But the idea is that it's still temporary, and as soon as my back is able to do more mild things, like once I'm able to start hiking again or disc golfing again, even if it's still not good enough to bike or snowboard, then I'm always going to choose those things over Trials HD. And I know that I can do that because there's no community for Trials HD anymore, really. I mean, a couple people are occasionally going back to build a new track in it or whatever, but I won't feel like I'm missing out on anything if all of a sudden I decide, you know, my back's better, I'm going to spend the next several weeks trying to go hiking and disc golfing as much as I can and not turn on my Xbox at all. I can turn it on again a month from then when I feel like playing a little bit and see that I didn't miss out on anything. And if I did that, if I got into the Trials Evolution community and I did that, I feel like, you know, I'd step away for 3 days and like, oh my god, like 5 or 6 or 7 new tracks from all these different creators I love came out, and people want to see what my runs would be like on them, and I'm tempted to try them myself too, and I want to see what they're like. And well, I've already done, you know, 9 out of 10 of this guy's tracks, and now he has a 10th one. Well, I got to do all 10 anyway because I really enjoy his tracks, and I want to see if I can get to the top of the leaderboard or be the first person to 0 fault this new ninja or whatever. I mean, I know my personality and my tendencies, and that's what would happen. And then if I would try to step away from the Xbox for an extended period of time, I know a few days would go by and I'd be like, oh, let's just check my messages, and oh my god, so many new tracks I want to do, and shit, well, let's just try to get through those. Oh no, it's 5 in the morning. Okay, there goes half of my next day from sleeping. And you know, I'm still doing that now with Trials HD, but I don't feel like I'm missing out on anything by sleeping for half the day because I can't even go for a walk right now. My back is so bad. So hopefully that addresses that. I wanted to cover that too because I know that these days the majority of my subscribers are from my Trials HD videos and not my mountain bike videos or any video games I posted regularly in the past before I got into Trials. So yeah, that's pretty much an update on my life right now. Things are difficult, but I'm trying to be positive and move forward and be determined to get back to the things I love, mountain biking and snowboarding, even if it takes me a year of recovering and physical therapy and exercising and stretching and yoga and whatever it's going to take. Standing desk, I'll do what I have to do. Thanks again for listening and making it all the way to the end.